fourth parak, and we are on daf. What? Tezvav base. Right. Tezvav base. At the 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 6 line down. Rabbi Yochanan. Oh, 1 second. Guys, I'm saying shiur and I'm recording. Rabbi Yochanan Yoav Dinar Krivoy Amashach. Rabbi Yochanan gave money to his relatives on oil. Yakar Mashach. The price of oil went up. Now, the question was a question of ribis, right? Can he get back, can he take liberty in oil even though the price went up? Also, Shal Rabbi Yanai, so came as Rabbi Yanai. Armalese said, even though you didn't yet do Mashicha and you haven't yet done what's required for a kinyan midrabanan, midvar Torah mos konin. Midoraisa money is val kinyan. V'lomar amru ein konim. Why do they say they don't make a kinyan? Shloyomer lo nisvuchi terech ba'aliyah. So somebody should, the seller, after the buyer's already paid, should not say, whoops, oh, that grain that you bought, it got burnt up in my attic. So therefore, Rabbanan said, kinyan doesn't take place until Mashiach takes place. But midoraisa mos konos, and that's enough of an acquisition to avoid the problem of ribis. That means you have a claim on the oil. Even though it went down price, you can take delivery. Okay?
The underlying principle of hefker bed and hefker?
Well, not really, because here's the opposite of that. Because midoraisa actually was already kona the oil.
It's already kona the oil, but the Rabbanim took it away from him.
Yeah.
They made it Mashiach.
Oh, yeah, they took it away from him. That's true. And, until he makes a Mashiach. But here, they left it in his possession until in terms of avoiding this of ribis. But it's not that they took away the kinyan most. That is the hefker based in hefker, right?
Right.
Here they just didn't. Here they relinquished to a certain extent the hefker based in hefker. They left it on the din d'oraisa that money makes the acquisition. Am I making myself clear?
Yeah.
Okay. So. Rabbi Shmuel Bar Sustroi, B'Shem Ravo said, Im Amar Lo Nisuvuchi Techa Ba'aliyah Ne'amon. If the seller says, well, actually your grain did get burnt up in the second floor, so then he is believed. That if you take a look at the Gilin Ephraim at the bottom, I think you all have a Gilin Ephraim. Gilin Ephraim says, the second line, Keperush Maraponim, this is like Maraponim says, the Sover Karazo holds like the Baal Amor. Shimlo Chazu Bohem, if they didn't renege on the deal, before the fire occurred, the Nisrfu, and they got burnt up in a fire, who has the Lokeach, the damage goes to the buyer. So Shita the Ba'amor, we actually don't pass in this way. Well, that even though Chazal said it ain't over till Mashiach takes place, but that's only in terms of the right to renege on the deal. But if the buyer did not renege on the deal, even though the kinyan is not complete, if a loss does occur, he suffers the loss. Okay? So, according to the Baal Amor, what Chachamim gave is the right to renege until Mashiach takes place, but it really does belong already to the buyer till then. So according to the Baal Amor, it's an incentive for the seller to save the grain, even though the grain is really not his anymore, unless the buyer reneges. It's an incentive to save the grain in order that it'll make it in order to make it easier for him to collect on, I shouldn't say collect because I got the money, but in order for him to not have to go through court cases and all sorts of recriminations, but in fact, if the fire does occur, and if he was not able to save the grain, then the loss is sustained by the buyer. Okay, so that's what Rabbi Shmuel Bar Sustroy again it says, and again we don't paskin that way. We paskin that the kinyan is not complete till Mashiach takes place. Not that there's the right of refusal, but the kinyan is not complete until the Mashiach takes place. But Rabbi Shmuel Bar Sustroy is entitled to his opinion. Continuing further in the Gemara, Rabbi Yitzchak Makshe, Rabbi Yitzchak asked, Mana Kayomim, what are we talking about? In B'Shekanu Loma Osav, we're talking about that the money itself made a kinyan, and if you look again the Gilin Ephraim, in the next place where he has a parentheses, well maybe I'll just read straight in the Gilin Ephraim. The next one says, the last word in the first column, it says, they made a condition, if they actually stipulated that money should make the kinyan, that it's complete and total. The Beis Yosef in the Shulchan Aruch said, the Beis Yosef Moho, you can opt out of Takana Chachamim. This is a Shas question. When Chachamim make a Takana for you, must you abide by their Takana, or can you opt out of their Takana? So they hold that even though the Rabbanan said most Einon Konos, if you want to opt out of that and opt for most being Konos, you have the right to do so, right? So if we're talking about a case where the money already made the kinyan, Shaloni Sirfu, I'm continuing on in the Gilin Ephraim, which parallels the Gemara. Of course, it's the buyer's account which got burnt up. Upshito Shnamana Moicher, and obviously the sellers believe Shamotzi B'Chaver Lavaraya. If the buyer wants to prove otherwise, he's got to prove it. V'lo Konalomosov. If on the other hand the money has not yet made the acquisition for him, shall then if from the surfu, then we should say that the sellers got burnt up. Because the law should be on the seller, and this would be v'soiver. Actually, there should be a parenthesis here. V'soiver kadasa goyim al chokim razah. This conclusion of whoever speaking, Rabbi Yitzchak, is saying that not like the Baal Mori. He wants to say that it's not true that if you hold that most have not yet made a kinyan because they did not opt out explicitly of Takonis Chochamim, then in fact the grain continues to belong to the seller, and then the person who's liable in the case of a loss is in fact the seller. Now, the Gilin Ephraim shot really makes a machlokas between Rabbi Shmuel Bar Sustroy and Rabbi Yitzchak, which is the machlokas Rishonim of the Baal Mor, with the other Rishonim, whether before Mashiach there is a kinyan or there isn't a kinyan as of yet. We don't like doing that generally, but I stared at this Yerushalmi for a great deal of time, and even Lieberman is really not sure what to do with this Yerushalmi, and he has a different girsa from the Escorial, which he brings in, and then he says maybe the Escorial is wrong. So I don't have a better shot in this Yerushalmi than this Gilin Ephraim, so I'm going to remain with that. Okay, let's go further. Rabbi Simon B'Shem Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Simon ben Levi said, Simon said name Rabbi Shimon ben Levi, an individual gives to his person, to his friend, Asora Dinari, $10. Ramalei says, Isli Garbach Mea, it should be a grievin, garbin. This is Scorial says it, and I think some of them before Shemir said it as well. He says, I want to buy with these $10 100 barrels of wine. Okay, it was cheap wine. Obviously it was 10 dinner was worth more than it is today. Now, I'm going to say my own shot here. It's in terms of ribbis, but Lieberman has a certain shot which I don't like, and the Or Samech has a pshat which I don't feel comfortable with, so I'm going to say my own pshat. What I think is the pshat is like this. If he says, Mihodem Beis or Shari, now there's also Ribis question. He's not taking delivery right away. He's paying right away, but he's not taking delivery. So if it's from a house, if the wine is stored in a house, that's okay. Why? Because I say, the wine is, right now, exists. Even though most ain't konos midrabana, but since midrash and most konos, and we said before that's sufficient to secure an interest in the wine, even if the price of wine goes up, that's okay. However, mehadein karma osur, if you are making a deal based on either wine or probably even the grapes themselves out in the vineyard, that's forbidden. Because in that case, there is simply too much benefit, because you're not really buying any wine right now, and besides that, there are risks which might occur out when it's in the vineyard. Even if it's already wine, it might leak into the ground, or if it's not yet wine, the grape crop might fail. And that's what Gemara is about to say. Ma ben kerem lebayis, what's the difference between a vineyard and a house? Bayis eino motzui lipo. The wine in the house, not likely the house is going to fall in, and therefore you acquired it now. Even if it goes up in price, delivery is okay. Kerem motzui lipo, the vineyard might well fall. There's another version here somewhere which says lisareif. It might get burnt up, and I forget whose girsa that is, but somebody brings down such a girsa. So since that's the case, so therefore it really is much more of an investment in which you're expecting a return as opposed to a kinyan. In other words, if you're buying wine now, you have a purchase interest in it, then even if it goes up in price, it's your wine, which went up in price, it's not ribis. But if you're investing in potential return of wine, which may come from this vineyard or may come from somewhere else, because there's so many things which can happen to a vineyard, so then this is much more of kind of a loan being extended to the owner of the vineyard, who will reciprocate later on in the wine product, and that's much more like ribis. Is that clear?
Well, but there's a certain risk that you're taking with it's sort of like a double slope on the loan.
Right, and that's what makes it ribis. That's what makes it like a loan.
So isn't an entrepreneur allowed to get a certain profit from the risk that he's taking?
No. He's not. That's going to be the next parak, Ezu Neshech. No, he's not allowed to get, he's not allowed, unless he has a true purchase interest. And what the Gemara is saying here is that this is not considered to be a true enough purchase interest. Okay, we're going to have to talk about in the next parak how that work. But no, entrepreneur can't get returned in terms of that risk. That's not unless the only heter which we're going to mean, it's a big heter, but the heter we're going to see next parak is if he stands to sustain the loss equally with the gain. And here he didn't accept upon himself any loss. He expects to get wine, no matter what the case is. It would have to be built in that in order that it's truly investment, that there's a potential gain and a potential loss. Okay? Okay, I'm Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi says, Achmamina, you see from this, from the case of the house, that Barnash Chavrei Asar Dinar, a person gives to his friend $10. Armalain, he says, B'manas on the Kedisha, take him li b'hom grovin. You're going to give me for them 100 barrels of wine. Became Shishach Yodabahed. Once the person, the owner of the house and the owner of the wine has received the money, he has to give him deliver eventually that commodity. In other words, it's an obligation. There might be mishapara, but the obligation does exist. He might. I didn't make that clear. He might be able to renege and get a mishapara, but the obligation does exist. But it's the main issue, which you're talking about, is not, and there is no ribis involved, and even if delivery occurs at a much higher price, that's okay. It's not the same shtichus yad we have all over Shas. Shtichus yad here means simply that the wine merchant took the money. He cast out his hand. He stuck out his hand to take the money. I was thrown by that for a loop also, but it's not a regular shtichus yad issue. Okay, sorry about that. It's confusing to me too. It was confusing to me too. Shimon Lakish says, "O konom yad amisecha." It says, or you shall acquire from the hand, of your friend. From your friend, you require Mashiach. Now he holds, is also in the Bavli, Rish Lakish holds Mashiach's Doraisa. It's not just the Rabbanan. Doraisa require Mashiach. But that's only from a fellow Jew. From a Goy, when you pay, you acquire. Okay? According to Yerushalmi Lakish, when is there ever Mishapara? After all, if there's no Mashiach, there's no Kinyan, right? So there should be no mishpar ever. If you hold that there's midaraisa, most konos rabbanan took that away, so they said, well, but still, if somebody pays money and then reneges on the deal, there's a mishpar. But if you hold that there's no kinyan at all until actually, you do mashicha, so when do you ever get mishpar? So Rabbi Yisrael Rabun said that it's a v'sayake tana, that it's going like the following brisa. The Tani we learned, and this is not in the Bavli, anoisim b'noisim b'dvorim. If somebody doing business on the basis of verbal exchanges, the Shai Terzal takes out the word ein, and I'm going to go by him. Most of us hold mishpar, he gets a mishpar nonetheless. In other words, there's a chiddush, because we hold that usually only if we hold most konos is there mishpara. But he holds, Rish Lakish holds, that even a noisim dvorim, even promises and verbal guarantees are sufficient that if a person reneges, that he gets a mishpara on it. Okay, it's a big chiddush.
It's like the diamond in 47.
Yeah, but see there, you could argue it's a real kinyan. It's just they made the concept of kinyan more extensive. Rish Lakish is saying even though there is no concept of kinyan, it's just promises and guarantees that's sufficient to require mishpara, which is a much bigger chiddush than the diamond merchant handshake.
All right.
Okay, halacha gimel. Ha'ona arba kesef mesimba arba kesef l'sela. Ha'ona is $4 out of every $24. Shtus l'mekaf, that's a sixth of the purchase. In other words, if it's supposed to be 24, and I charge 28, right? So then that's Ha'ona because it's a sixth, right? Actually, the Mishnah is ambiguous. It could also be if I was supposed to charge 20 and I charge 24, so then also would be Ha'ona, and that's an issue which is going to come up in the Gemara. How long do you have until to give back the Ha'ona? In other words, how long do you have to renege on the deal? So shiur, the amount of time it takes to show another merchant or a relative to get an analysis of whether you were ripped off or not. Rabbi Tar from Lud, Rabbi Tar from Paskin in Lud. How Noya Shmonas Kesef L'Sela. Ha'ona is 8 Kesef per Sela. In other words, 8 out of 24. Sela, the Shlishim Mekach, up to a third. And that, of course, gave much more leeway to the sellers because they could rip off the buyers to a much greater extent. The Samchut Agarei Lud, the merchants of Lud, were very happy because it gave them much more leeway to rip off their customers. Armalan, so you say, yeah, but there's a catch. The buyer can renege not just the amount of time it takes him to go to the next stall and have it assessed, but the amount of time, the entire day. So Armal said, they said, we'd rather have the smaller shiur for rip-off, but be able to rip off more people. Okay? In other words, that rip-off should take effect much quicker. You understand what I'm trying to say? In other words, that they wanted to be able to even though they would rip off only up to a sixth, not up to an eighth, not up to a third, nevertheless, it was their advantage that the buyer has a far shorter time to be able to renege on the deal.
So volume rip-off.
Right, volume rip-off, exactly. Okay? The Chazal they went back to the Chachamim that it's only until you can get to the next stall to relative to assess the situation. So both the buyer and seller can be ripped off depending on the situation. Just like there's Ha'ona for a commoner. So too there's cheating for a tago, for a professional individual. If he's a professional salesman, then he should have made sure of the deal himself. Then it's his own responsibility. We don't guarantee him away from Ha'ona. The guy who was ripped off, he has the option. He has he can exercise the option, which means here he has a superior hand. He can say either give me back my money O Masha Nisani, or give the entire cost, the entire transaction, or give me the ono, whatever the ono is. Okay, so now the Gemara says, Rava Mashiru, Rabbi Yochanan Leisu Shura. So a lot of interpretations of this. If you look in the Ritbaz, in the narrow lines of Ritbaz, it's on the left-hand top corner, in the narrow lines counting down from the first narrow line, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines down in the narrow lines. Okay? Oh no, that's the next thing. One second, where is it? I had that underlined, so I assume that's what I wanted to show you. No, it's before that. At the beginning. Rav Amar Shirhu, Perish Te'eno no pachos mi'arba kesef. There is no less than $4. Kimbo D'Tiyam b'mastiso no arba kesef misim b'arba kesef l'sala. In other words, ono has to reach a certain level of significance. And he goes on and says in the next line, Eino no leprutos, right? In other words, if I rip you off by a few pennies, even if those pennies are a very high proportion of the sale. In other words, let's say a bubble gum sells in one store for a nickel and another store for a dime, right? So that's 100% rip-off, right? But there's no rip-off on less than $4. That's what the Gemara, the Mishnah wants to say. There has to be a specific measure in order to, minimum bar, in order to achieve the concept of onah. Okay? Whereas Rabbi Yochanan, no, it's not a minimum. There is onah no matter how small. In other words, if I supposed to cost a nickel and I charge you 6 cents, that's onah as well. There is no shiur. Now that's one shot. If you look at the frame on the bottom, he gives another shot, which is also quite possible. Rav Amar Shirhu, Klomar bepachos mishtus muter lohenas. I'm allowed to rip you off by less than a 6. It's not that ethics demands that I don't rip you off at all. No, I can rip you off to a 6. It's a shiur. After that, I can charge up to a 6, and that's not a problem. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Leisu Shura, the gambe pachos mishtus aser laonos. I can't, if I know that I'm ripping you off, I can't rip you off even by less than 6. That's what he says. And he says that the Rosh is the stopping, prepared that Boschav, so the Gilin Ephraim again makes the two issues here contingent on an issue which the Rishonim raised in the Bavli, but that's okay, I guess. So the two interpretations that just showed you, the Ritbaz that shiur and less than a shiur, or shiur and not shiur, has to do with whether there's a minimum benchmark threshold for onah. And according to the Ephraim, their machlokus is whether you are allowed to do onah in less than a 1/6. Now Rav says, going back to the Gemara, the last line. Rav called no save and no say. If somebody makes a condition that onah does not apply to his transactions, it's totally. The Ritbaz says, which I was going to show you before, just says that this other statement Rav is going to do the previous statement, just since Rav said that one, bring down Rav said this one as well. Anybody makes a trade on the condition that there is no onah, yesh lo onah, there is onah involved. That's a classic issue of masna mashkosa b'Torah. You can't make a condition against the Torah said. The Torah says there is a concept of onah. You can't say, well, let onah not apply to me. What you can do, it's the Bavli discusses, you can say that, you can stipulate that the guy must be moichel you the onah, but you can't stipulate that onah is not applicable to this at all. So it might be semantics, but it depends if you're going against the Kohen Torah, you're trying to circumvent the Torah. Going against the Kohen is osir, circumventing is not osir. Okay, but... Well, it's not that blatant, but you get the idea. It's a similar idea, yes. Okay, says the Gemara right there, Omid Beis. Tani Rabbi Levi, the Escorial takes out the Rabbi. There was no, the Rabbi Levi was an Amoira, and this Levi is Tano. Tani Levi Honoah Pruta. Honoah is a Pruta. And in other words, even if you're ripped off by a pruta, which is obviously Rabbi Yochanan, according to the Ephraim, like Rabbi Yochanan said before, that there is the minimum shiur is a pruta, not for kesef. And the next one should be, Skoriel says, and there's so change instead of Ono again, which is redundant, it should be Hodoya Pruta. It's later, Mishnah later on, which I don't know if we'll get to tonight, but which says that the shiur, the minimum shiur for Moedim Miktas, the minimum shiur for somebody who concedes that he's liable, is at least a Pruta. You can't concede on less than that. Elo Noah Atzmo Mao. Now, the question seems to be, what if it's exactly a sixth? The Ono is exactly a sixth. What's the status? In other words, we know less than a sixth is not Ono. More than a sixth is Ono. What about exactly a sixth? So the Yerushalmi says, you're saying the Bible says, Tani Nikne HaMekach.
Like a shiur in the Bava.
No, Bava Metzia.
The Bava Basra, the Bavli.
It isn't.
You know about the Shobeh?
Oh, but that's the one where they kick Rabbi Yirmiyah out of the base medrash.
Right.
No, but this is very common. It seems from this whole parak from Hazov, that was very common that to measure in increments of sixths. In other words, it's not an infrequent question here. Because of the way their monetary system is based, and the truth is, you're going to England next week, I think the English system, before they changed over to metric, was also based on sixes. That seems to be very common because 6 and 12 are very easily divisible numbers. There are many divisors. So I'm pretty sure that 6 was a very common shiur of Ono in the old days. It's not like the dove standing exactly at 50 amos, one leg over one way, one the other way. It's not an infrequent occurrence. So Elonoya Atzomau. So Tayin Dikta Mekach Choyzul Anayo. So the Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. The Mekach is acquired, and but you give back the Ono. In other words, it doesn't cancel the sale is sustained, and nobody can renege, but you do give back the difference. The Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Now, since Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, obviously the next opinion here cannot be that of Rabbi Yochanan. It has to be somebody else. So the Shara Terzot changed it to Rabbi Nosson, which I think might be what it says in the Bavli. Rabbi Nosson Omer, Bartel Mikcho, the sale is nullified. Even at precisely 6, the sale is nullified. Okay? Kana boy kumi rav. Everybody still there?
Yeah.
Okay? Kana boy kumi rav. Kana asks in front of Rav. V'shosh ha'moicher misana. Now this is a question of arithmetic. The percentages don't work out. If you say that 4 is a variation on 24, which is considered to be ono. Sometimes 4, that means if the sale was supposed to be 20, and the ono was 4, so actually that is an ono of a fifth, right? If 20 was supposed to be the price, and if the ono was 4, so it's a fifth. It's a sixth of the new total. It's 6th of 24, but it's a fifth off of the old total. And vice versa, if the sale was supposed to be 24 and the sale was instead 28, so that's a sixth of the old total, but a seventh of the new total, right? So you got that math?
Yep.
Yes. So yes, when the moicher is ripped off, that means he's getting underpaid. He's only getting paid 20 instead of 24. So the latitude is up to a fifth. It's true. It's a sixth of the 24, but he's actually only getting paid 20, and 4 is a fifth of 20. So you're actually giving latitude up to a fifth. Yet when the buyer is ripped off, that means he's getting charged 28 instead of 24, then it's only actually a sixth, the sixth of 24. So where's the justice? So in other words, the ratios are not equal. So Amalei, so he said, no, not such a great question. Huvanayaso, the vav here is taken out by the Skorial, the little vav, the beginning of Mitzdarfin. Amalei, Huvanayaso Mitzdarfin Achtus. In other words, whatever way we can consider it a sixth, this is basically the Bavli says, well, whatever way we consider a sixth is considered a sixth. We're kind of, lax about the standards of a sixth. The fifth could be a sixth, the seventh could be a sixth, as long as it works out to be a sixth. Okay? Says the Gemara, Machar lo shaveh chamisha b'shisha. If he sold something worth 5, 4, 6, right? Yochel meimar lei. I think it's actually a question, if I recall correctly from my preparing. Let me see this. Can he say to him, in other words, he sold him something, here the seller got ripped off, right? It's only worth $5, the buyer got ripped off, sorry. It was only worth $5, but he sold it for $6, right? So, Yochel meimar lei. So can the seller say to the buyer, Chad dinar igraft, you were ripped off by $1. Sav dinar, I'll give you back your $1. Now, igraft is ripped off. There's a gears in the Skorial, igracht, which is in line actually with the next statement here. Igracht means you were made a laughing stock by $1. I'll give you back the $1. Rabbi Zera said, no. Yochel meimar, the buyer, it's really a kasha. Why do you say that the buyer has the right for a neg? Let the buyer just get, on the entire deal, let the buyer just get back the extra $1, right? So it says, Rabbi Zera says, Yochel meimar lei. Interesting, it's not in the Bavli, this language. Rabbi Zera said, Yochel meimar lei could say, Leis ikri, it's not my honor, Dion biyasa omrin, that people will say, ploini ikrach. So there's a word in Hebrew, in modern slang Hebrew. I don't think there's necessarily the equivalent in English, which is friar. I don't want them to call me a friar, meaning I don't want them to call me, somebody who's naive and not wise to the ways of the world, and a loser. All those components going to that slang Hebrew word friar. So I don't want them to call me, I don't want them to make fun of me that I'm not sharp in doing business. So not only am I going to get back the $1, that would not suffice, because then you'll be able to go around telling people, or people will know that I fell for this thing. No, I want the whole deal to be canceled, and he has the right to do so. So it's interesting because of this psychological need, we actually shape the halacha this way. Okay? So again, ikrach means that so-and-so was made of laughing stock. Vis the boy meimar. Some say that he has another time. He can say, Yochel meimar le, he can say, Leisu yakri, instead the buyer can say, it's not my according to my honor, malbush b'chamisha dinar, to wear a $5 shirt. In other words, yes, it's true, you rectify the situation by giving back my $1. And instead of having paid $6 for the shirt, I would be wearing a $5 shirt. But a chveis, $5 shirt, it's not lefi kvaydin in itself. I need a more choshev shirt than that. And therefore, you can renege on the deal. Okay? Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Lezer, Rabbi Yosha, Amrei, they all said, my time of the hain Tanya. What's the reason for this Bryce, I think it is. Yoda ana delohavis. This is a difficult line. 1 second. Yeah. This is another reason why you can renege on the deal. They said, my time of the entire, what's the reason you can renege on the deal, even if he's willing to get back your $1 which got ripped off? He says like this. Now this guy actually is a shrewd businessman. He says, you know what? The buyer says, Yoda Anna, I knew when I bought for $6. The law havas mikimti tava. Mikimti, I don't know what the word comes from, but it means the purchase, the object. This thing was in tava, even though it's written here with the tav, is as if it's written with the test. I knew that this object I'm purchasing was not worth, it wasn't valued el chamisha dinarim. I knew that. But since I needed it badly, Yahweh Ashita dinarim, I paid you $6. But I knew from the beginning from the get-go that you were a stinker, and I had to get it at that time, so therefore I had no choice but to pay it. Now, Sabti Doch, you take back the object, Vahavdi Di, give me back my $6, which is an amazing thing. It seems like almost that the buyer is being, to me it seems, that the buyer is being unethical in this case, right? Because, but I guess, it's like the Yaakov with Lavan. In other words, with a shrewd person or a tricky person, you could be tricky yourself. So he says, so he knew originally, he didn't have das ever to truly be koined. There's really no das to be koined, just that he was playing the game with the seller. The seller wanted to rip him off, so he turned the tables on the seller, and now the seller has to bear the brunt of that turning of the tables.
What time frame he has on this?
Well, I assume it's it's a good question. The time frame should only be until you can show it to a Tagor or to Krovo.
Right.
Which may mean only a short period of time. But in a small town, you get more time than that. Not because small towns are different, but rather it takes longer to find a merchant. So maybe this is like in a small town, so the merchants only come from Monday to Thursday. So then he would have a little bit longer time to go and ascertain. You're right, theoretically it would not, this time should not apply very often.
And the buyer didn't use the
Excuse me?
time period. The buyer didn't use the object, whatever he was buying, and use it.
Right, he didn't use it in a way which would use it up, obviously. Is that what you mean to say?
Yeah.
Yeah, right, then he wouldn't be able to return it. That's right. He sold the buyer, the seller ripped off the buyer. In this case is also a similar case in the Bible. The seller ripped off the buyer. He sold him something which was worth 5 for 6. But they were not able to negotiate a settlement until now went up the price, it's worth 7. Okay? So now it's not in the interest of the buyer to give it back. Rabbi Yaakov Rabbi Avob said, tough. It's like the seller's deal to the buyer has been nullified, so too the buyer now cannot hold it back from the seller. He's got to give it back. Okay? So it's an interesting concept. In other words, you have to, even though it's the advantage of the person who was the tricky guy, nevertheless he has to give it back. Now they're going to ask a question on that. That's we're not finished with that. It says more Tam, it's in the top of Yudzam and Alf. Wait a second. Tam went over there. Arba midas b'meichel. There are four categories of sellers. Machlo chitim yafos. If you sold him good wheat, nimtzu ros, and it turned out that it was on the premise it was good wheat, obviously, and it turned out that it was bad wheat. Lokeach yochel lachsabo. The buyer can renege on the deal, right? Because obviously he was expecting to get good ones. Ros v'nimtzu yafos. He sold them good grain, and it turned out, sold them grain which was presented as being inferior grain, and it turned out that was good grain. Then the seller can renege. So if that's the case, it would seem here that what I want to say, that it all depends who was misrepresenting and who therefore suffered as a result. And here certainly the seller misrepresented the buyer. The buyer didn't misrepresent anything. It happened to be his good luck. So why should the seller be able to renege now on the deal if the buyer does not want to renege on the deal? So says the Gemara, Rabbi Yosef said, V'saya kan tana na noisim edvarim. He says, Gleveman brings down a shot here, which from Rishonim, it's not his own. He says that lisa v'litein means to well, initially we thought lisa v'litein means to give back the honor, and therefore we had an issue: do you have to give back or not give back? So he says that when it says Lisa of Elite back on the bottom of Yutesai and Base says Chamisha B'Shisha Lo speak Lisa Elite at Jehoker Misheva, that now 1 second, I'm not sure I understand what I wrote here myself. Just give me a second here. Sure what I wrote here, but let me see if I can reconstruct it. So again, let me read it out. Amar Beiser Bun V'Sayach Ein Tana Neisiv Neisiv Dvarim Ein Misa So Moshe So Mishapora. It means even if he, I think this is what it means. Even when it says on the bottom of Tezayin or Beis, where Chamisha B'Shish Lo Yisbik Lisa L'Tenat Shohokim Misheva, that Rabbi Yaakov Bar Yidi and Re'avo B'Shem Rabbi Yochanan said Kshein Shabbatim Eitzeh Kach Batim Eitzeh. It doesn't mean that the seller has the right to nullify the sale now, in which he ripped off the buyer, because he says, well, it's true I ripped you off, but now since it's my advantage to renege, I'm calling the rip-off. That's what we thought initially. Let me go into that a little bit greater detail. What we thought initially is that the Bryce is saying like this: the seller whipped off the buyer. The buyer wants to renege. Then the buyer sees an advantage because it went up to beyond his purchase price. Now the seller wants to exercise the option of saying, it's true I ripped you off, but din is din. The halacha is that whenever there's a rip-off, we nullify the sale. So I'm exercising nullification, right? So that was what we initially understood. So then we said, that's not fair. And we brought down this brisa here on the top of Yud Zayin and Aleph, which says that it depends who was misrepresented and who was misled. But, so here the seller shouldn't have the right to renege. He's the one who misrepresented and misled. He should suffer the consequences. So then the Gemara brings on Rabbi Yossi Rabun, who says, you're right. Of course that's the case. What it means is like this. Let's say the buyer already committed. He committed to give back the object to the seller. And now he wants to pull out of it, because obviously he sees an advantage. We're saying that in this case, there is no mishapora. The buyer can renege on the deal. Why? Because he sees that ultimately it's his advantage to keep it. He can do, even though we agreed to give it back to the seller, nevertheless, now that he has not yet done so, and it's gone up in price, there's no mishapora issue. That's what it means to say. Even though they already agreed to give the object back, since it wasn't actually done already, so therefore, the buyer can renege on the deal to give it back, and he can be mevatel that deal, and he gets to keep it himself. So actually now that I'm saying it over again, I see that there's a little, what's complicated here is that back on Tezayin Amud Beis, when it says, that means he hasn't yet given it back, so he can renege on the deal. That's Rabbi Yaakov said. Just like initially the buyer can nullify it vis-a-vis the seller, now the buyer can nullify vis-a-vis himself and say he wants to keep it instead. But when it says here on Yud Zayin Amud Aleph that Rabbi Boone says, Rabbi Yisrael Boone says that that's talking about where there's verbal negotiations. In other words, where only verbal negotiations take place and there hasn't yet been actual giving back and forth, then there is no mishapara yet. So here it says, since there only were nosev and nosev b'dvarim, and they weren't yet nosev and nosev b'yadayim, that's why there's no mishapara, and that's why the buyer gets to keep the object he had. Okay? So again, initially we thought that the buyer has to give it back. The sale is null and void. Now we're saying altogether, even to the advantage of the seller. Now we're saying that that's not the case. Now we're saying that the buyer has the right to renege on his agreement to give it back to the seller. That's what it meant to begin with. Okay? A little bit complicated, but I think that's the shot. Okay. Halacha Daled. The commentator Salach said, now we're switching from talking about objects to talking about money. And of course, in the old days, money was evaluated by weight plus imprint, right? So obviously weights were constantly wearing down in the coins. So how much weight can a silver coin be missing and still be considered to be the coin? So commentator said, it won't be cheating a person to use this coin to pay for objects. So Arba Isaros Me'isar Ledinar, 4 Isaros when there's an Isar Ledinar. In other words, that's also the shiur of all over of 1/6 basically. For 4 Isaros when there's an Isar Ledinar is the shiur of 1/6. Don't ask me exactly how it works out, but somehow it works out. The same Moshe says, but I have no desire to figure it out. Right? Arba Pundionos be Pundion Ledinar, which is a smaller measure. No, I'm wrong. On the contrary, these are higher standards, these are finer standards. I think this is actually 1/24th. And if you don't make Arba Pundionos be Pundion Ledinar, that's 1/12th. Because by money, he says, and Rabbi Shimon Omer, Shmona Pudionos, Shtei Pudionos, that's 1/6. So in other words, on the contrary, here the first two Tanaim are saying, by money, there's a much finer, what's the word? A much finer threshold, right. Much finer threshold, because obviously money has to be more exactly worth what it purports to be worth than an object. Okay? So Tani. So we learned Yoser Mikan Motzia B'Shava Sela. Yeah, I'm sorry, I read that wrong. Tani Yoser Mikan Motzia B'Shava. If it's greater, in other words, there's more weight to it than the shiur of Onah, then you give it you can spend it as its full value. In other words, depending on which time we're holding, like whether it's 1/24th, 1/12th, 1/6, if it's within that proportion, you can spend it at its full worth. Now, Yoser a sela ad shekel. Now, a sela is negotiable even if it's at less than full value, because it has surpassed the threshold at which it can be regarded as full value. You could still use it until it's half size, ad shekel, and obviously use it at its current value, whatever that might be. A dinar you can use at rova, which is half of its value. Pachas mikan, less than that, however, afilu kisor, even if it's gone down in size to 1/4 of its original size, and now it looks like 1/4. So it does look like $1. It does look like half $1. It looks like 1/4, so spend it like 1/4. No. Then you're not allowed to use it anymore. And you can only spend it up to half when it's lost half its weight. And of course, once it's gone beyond the shiur of either 12, 24th, or 12th, or 6th, you have to use it at its current value. But once it goes below half of its original face value, you can't use it at all. Okay? Now, now the Gemara now brings on a very weird case. That's basically till now with the Bavli as well. Now the Gemara is on a very weird case, and I think it's a Pella, but I have there is no shot here which makes sense to me monetarily. The two types of things, there's a coin and a slug. In modern Hebrew, it's also called an asimon. They don't use them in Israel anymore, but they used to be the phone tokens. Do you guys remember those phone tokens?
With the with a hole in the middle.
Right. Those were called asimonim because they weren't coins; they were slugs. They were slugs with imprints, but they were slugs. They had no face value. That's the post office used to would just raise the price in accordance with the current cost of a phone call, whatever that would be, right? So that's called an asimon, has no face value. So you always say al asimon b'sela. Let's say you have a coin, which if it was used as an asimon, it would actually be worth more. But it was used as a matbeya, it would only be worth half of that, a shekel. I don't know where you have such a reality, but there's such a thing. A coin which used as a slug would be worth twice its value as a coin, right? Or vice versa. Al asimon b'shekel. This makes more sense to me. Used as a slug, it's worth half its value. A matbeya, use a coin, it's worth its full value. So in both these cases, eino ela tzuras matbeya. You have to use it based on its value as the coin, as in terms of the imprint which is upon it. In other words, that even if it's going to be worth more as an asimon, nevertheless you have to go as a coin because it has an imprinted value placed upon it. It follows the full parameters of a coin. Okay, now once the coin is too small, then you can't use it anymore. You can give it a little charam, not to somebody who's a thief, nor a rug, nor a murderer. In other words, you want to give it as a bribe or payment to an evil person. So you would think it's okay, it's not okay. Because they're going to use it to cheat other people. So you can't use it even for that purpose of paying off bad people. All you can do is put a hole in it, and put it around your son's neck as a necklace. Now the Bavli, it says, around your son or your daughter's neck. But it only says tzavra b'no. So I'm not sure exactly whether there's any machlokes, or Yosha brings up that point. I'm not sure if there's any difference between the Bavli and Yerushalmi and that. But he does say that the Rambam probably noted the difference because the Rambam says, when he passes in the letter, it says, v'tola b'tzavar kotam. Okay, he doesn't, kotam, which can include ben or bas, I guess. But I'm not sure. Anyway, so there is that difference. But when is this all true? Bedinarim usloim, by silver coins. But by gold coins and matbeos here means large, matbeos kesef, large silver coins, unlike regular silver coins, which are where the weight is much more of an issue. In other words, there the imprint pales in comparison to the weight, and there we have to take the weight much more into account than we do by a silver coin. So a smaller silver coin. Small silver coin, the denomination printed upon it has much more significance than the weight. Vice versa by gold coins and large silver coins. Okay? Whatever the parameters are for using for chulin, Kachmutzi and Meiser Sheni are the same parameters for Meiser Sheni in terms of redeeming Meiser Sheni on it. However, you shouldn't have in mind the Escorial adds the Meiser Sheni. You shouldn't specifically have in mind to use lousy coins to hoard them all for the purpose of Meiser Sheni. But yeah, if it happens to be that that's when you have, and if it's the parameters theoretically of circulation, so you use it for Meiser Sheni. But you should not intend to use all your inferior coins for the purpose of Meiser Sheni. Okay? Now, concerning coins, to when can you give back a coin if you find that the coin is missing, there's a no on the coin. B'krochin and metropolis is until the time you can show it to a money changer, which might be a few moments. But in villages, like I mentioned before, sometimes different shiur, until next Friday, when obviously people come to town to sell for Shabbos, and you get some expert opinion as to the value of your coin. Now this is going back on any or not. Well, I shouldn't say that. I'm not sure, but I think it's going back on any, not just on the coin. If the guy recognized that was his coin, which he spent in somebody's store, and it was a bad coin, and he's, as the name Moshe says, he's a pious person. I feel like even after 12 months, he should accept it back and give a refund for having spent the wrong coin, a bum coin. Turning the page, design base. However, if he's not a chassid and he doesn't want 12 months later to reimburse you, It's going to be upset, but you don't have any recourse in court. The nice of Ma'aser Sheni, as you mentioned before, you can give it to Ma'aser Sheni, even if it's not such a good coin. It's not a problem. So you're only a stingy, miserly stinker, but you're not actually transgressing the halacha. Okay, bad midos, but not bad compliance with halacha. Hanoy arba kesef. As you mentioned before, the shiur is $4 out of 24. A claim in court which can generate a shvua, his shtei kesef is 2 silver coins. Vayadoya, the confession which generates a shvua, moida mitzvah is a shava pruta. Chamesh prutas, and there are 5 prutas altogether. Hodoya shava pruta. Confession in the case of a loan is a shava pruta. L'isha miskadesh is a shava pruta. Woman gets married, the value of a pruta. V'anen is shava pruta. Min hekdesh, somebody derives a shava pruta anor from hekdesh. Commits mila. Hamotzi shava pruta chayav lachri. Somebody buys the shava pruta must make an announcement in the marketplace that he found this lost object. Now, obviously, it's not a pruta itself. Money itself, you don't make achraza, but the value of a pruta. Hagoyes chaver shava pruta. If somebody steals a friend, even the value of pruta, finish below, and he takes an oath to him falsely that he did not steal. You have to take it to him and follow him until you can return. Even to the distant ends of the earth, to media. There are 5 fifths. Truma, which are of course penalty fines imposed on top of the principal. Truma, if you eat truma and you're Yisrael, Utrumas Meiser in Yisrael, Utrumas Meiser, even Utrumas Meiser of questionably tight things. Chala, he ate chala or bikurim. All these are specifically intended for kohanim. When you come to make reparations, Meiser Chamishu out of 5th. Similarly, if somebody eats, redeems, the growth of the 4th year of his orchards, which is holy. Ma'aser Sheni is shalo, and both of these are shalo, or Ma'aser Sheni, both of them when you're redeeming your own, not redeeming somebody else's stuff. Ma'aser Chomesh out of 5th. Hapay Hekdesh, if redeeming your own Hekdesh, Ma'aser Chomesh out of 5th. V'anen Shar Pruta min Hekdesh, and somebody derives a no Shar Pruta from Hekdesh, is also Mosim Chomesh adds a 5th as well. But goes as Chaver Shabruta, if somebody steals from his friend the value of a pruta, Vinishbalo, and he takes a false oath to him, Mosim Chomesh, he adds a 5th as well. Okay? Now, the line at the beginning of the Gemara here, I stared at this, I worked this a long time today until finally came up with a pshat. And here, this pshat, the Ekas Lieberman and the Sharter Yisrael, they both changed the girsa, and they're wrong. The Scorio doesn't change the girsa, and obviously it was a mistake on their part. Poor judgment. But I think I have pshat here. But I'm going to pull like the Kohen Ephraim did, and explain this on the basis of Shitas Rishonim. Normally, you can only redeem Ma'aser Sheni money on fruit and fruit on money. Everybody knows that?
Yeah, that's good.
Right. When you have the fruit, you redeem it on money. When you come to Yerushalmi, you take the money and buy fruit with it, right? Sometimes, and he brings down here the Pnei Moshe as a brisa, sometimes you can redeem money on money. But usually you can only redeem one type of money on another type of money. For example, you redeem silver on copper or copper on silver. Okay? Now, the question is, can you ever redeem silver on silver? The Rambam says not. You can't. Ram Perek Beis in Ma'aser Sheni Alocha Hey. It says you can't. You can never redeem silver on silver nor copper on copper. But the Rosh in his Perush on Mishnayos, in first parak of the Mayim Mishnah Beis and the second parak of Ma'aser Sheni Mishnah Vav, which the Frankel Rambam brings down there, that's how I noticed it, says you can redeem silver on silver when the silver coin on which you're redeeming is more current, more liquid than the initial silver coin, which would be called Yofeh versus raw. So that's what Chizki actually says here, this din of the Rosh. Chizki Amar, L'tzorfa Yerushalayim, if you're making the money, you're gathering the money to go up to Yerushalayim, that's the way Pnei Moshe explains it. Mitzarfa B'Yofeh, then you could take less good silver coins and upgrade them to better silver coins, which is actually the halach of the Rosh. Now, Bal Challah B'Gvulin. However, Chizkiah's second point here is questionable. Now, this is going in case that the Pnei Moshe is discussing here. If you come to redeem, you had a lot of, actually not yet the Pnei Moshe, it's coming to say, you had a lot of copper coins, because you redeem Ma'aser Sheni many times over, right? Which people used to do on copper coins, because each time they redeem a little bit of Ma'aser Sheni. But now you want to make it into a silver coin to take to Yerushalmi, so you have less bulky stuff to take, because there are 192 prutos in a silver coin, so you want to take much less bulk when you travel to Yerushalmi. The airlines have luggage restrictions. So, Mechallah Baron. Then you can take the prutos of Nechoshes, the copper coins, and join together, and then exchange them for even a lousy silver coin, not just a superior silver coin, even for inferior silver coin. So the Gemara asks a kash on this latter statement. Well, didn't we learn? Now, this is the case that Pnei Moshe brings down here. If a guy had 2 coins of Ma'aser Sheni, both silver, one inferior, one superior. I'm sorry, mistake. He had 2 coins of silver, one inferior, one superior. One of them Ma'aser Sheni, one was not. He doesn't remember which one, and they got mixed together. So what does he do? So he redeems he takes the silver and copper coins, because it's possible to redeem silver and copper, even according to the Rambam. He takes copper coins, and he says, let the silver coin be redeemed on these copper coins, whichever silver coin is the coin which was initially Ma'aser Sheni. And then he uses the copper coins. You obviously take enough copper coins, and you use them to buy back the better silver coin, and then redeem back that which you redeemed on the copper coin, wherever it was, whichever of the 2 was. You now use those silver copper coins in turn to buy back one of the silver coins. And it says which one do you have to buy? Obviously, the better one. So if that's the case, how come Chizkiah says in this case you can use copper coins to buy an inferior silver coin? Did we learn that way the 2 silver coins get mixed up, one chulin and one Ma'aser Sheni, and redeem them on copper, and you buy back with copper, you have to buy back the better coin. But then you choose the better one and you mechal the copper on it. So it says, well, it's an obvious answer. I don't know even why the Gemara asks the question. It says, first Gemara finishes asking the question though. For Yover Arah the Aso saw when you buy back with the copper, buy back the inferior coin. It says, well, no. Amar, he said, Shan Yohi Hocha Shekvar Huchach by Ma'aser Sheni. It may well be that this better coin was the initial Ma'aser Sheni coin. No, when you're going from scratch from copper to silver, so it's not incumbent upon you to buy a better silver coin. But when you have 2 coins which are mixed together, and perhaps the better coin was the Ma'aser Sheni coin, then of course if you redeem on the copper and then want to go back to silver, you have to go back to the better silver coin. It's a pashto chiluk. Okay? Let's just finish the bottom of the Amr. Is that okay? A couple more minutes. Noisel Ma'aser Sheni. This is a header from the Mishnah. You give it to Ma'aser Sheni, even a defective coin. Well, we're not going to discuss that. We're going to discuss one of the shiur say v'chulei over here. We're going to discuss one of the next points in the Mishnah. Yaakov Azad Yerucham Sher Simon said, "V'chol Ma'aser Sheni she'en b'krono shava pruta ein moisiv chaimish." Famous machlokas also in the Bavli. If you have Ma'aser Sheni and there isn't in the principle of Ma'aser Sheni a pruta, then you don't add on a 5th when you're redeeming it, right? So the Ma'aser Sheni itself is worth a pruta. Rabbi Yochanan Shemiyah said no. Much more of that. Anytime the chomesh won't be worth a pruta, a mostly chomesh. So the minimum in order to redeem Ma'aser Sheni and add a chomesh coin to him is that the Ma'aser Sheni be worth not a pruta but 4 prutos. Once it's worth 4 prutos, a chomesh of 4, one of the Gemara's chomesh is 1, because 4 plus 1 equals 5, right? So according to him, the pruta has the chomesh is worth at least 4 cents in order to redeem it. Otherwise, there's no redemption. Because 4 cents in order to add on a chomesh, because the chomesh is worth a pruta. Okay, so that's the basic machlokas. Isma Sisim Messiah Davis, Isma Sisim Messiah Davis is a brayso which assists each one of them. The Tani we learn. Mimasro, probably pachas mishavar pruta. You redeem from your meiser and add a fifth, except when it says shavar pruta. Adamar, as Bryce teaches us, achever kana shavar pruta, that the principle is with shavar pruta. Tani Chol learned another brisa. Tani we learned it says Tani Masro Chamishisa. For the meiser it's fifth, and prat lepachas mishavar pruta. There it precludes where the chaimish is listed shavar pruta. Adamar, that brisa teaches us achever chumshur shavar pruta, that the chaimish has to be with the pruta. Amar by Memor said, our Mishnah played it safe. Our Mishnah over here at the top of the oven. Mastisa lo kadein v'lo kadein. Our Mishnah is not indicative either way. The it says in our Mishnah, Chamisha pruta is saying, it just says there are 5 prutos. V'lo tinina acheva kamra shav pruta doesn't weigh in on whether the principle is word of shav pruta or the chaymesh is be word of shav pruta. Utina, on the other hand, it says Chamisha chumshinei, it says the 5/5. It doesn't say over there that the chomesh has to be a shavar pruta either. So it doesn't weigh in either way. Let's just do the next halacha. It's very short and very easy. Halacha above. These are things which don't have ono at all, because they're all linked to land, and land has no ono. Because land has no ono because it says metalflin in the parasha. It says Moshe brings down okono miyad amisecha. It's got to be something which can be given from hand to hand. So therefore, avodim, which are linked to karkos, don't have ono, and hashtaros are not something which are gufa mammon. They're not worth money and something representative of money. So therefore, they're not considered to be like metalflin. For karkos, of course, real estate is the ultimate non-metalflin. For hekdeshus and hekdesh, there's no ownership in it. So who's getting ripped off? And therefore, there's no payment of double if any of these things are stolen. Lo tashlumei archavishin are 4 or 5. Shor mechinam eno nishbar. Shor mechinam does not take a shvur on any of these types of things given to Mishmir, because the parish of Shmir Sherman is by classic metalflin. These are not classic metalflin. Shor mesoch eno mishayim. So Shor mesoch also doesn't take these are not classic metalflin. If Shimon says, let's say you have a korban which got a move, and you need to replace that korban. So kachim shulchay b'achus kachim where you're liable to replace them if somebody cheats you on your sale of the original animal which got a mum. So yeshla or vice versa, I guess. If you cheat the buyer, yeshla then there is no because you have a vested stake in this. If you don't have to replace them. There is no no because you don't no longer have a vested stake and therefore there is no ownership. You're selling it, but you're selling it is not necessarily ownership. It's just that you're selling on behalf of hekdesh, since you have no vested interest remaining in order to replace the initial korban. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Av Sefer Torah Behemo Margolis, a Sefer Torah, an animal and a pearl. There's no neither. Of course, we're going to explain why. Amrullah said, not true. Amrullah Seil, they only said the things mentioned in the Reisha, Shtaris, Karkos, Hekdeshus, and Avodim, but these latter things, Sefer Torah, animal, and pearls do have honor. So why did he pick these things? Sefer Torah, Be'em Margos, Ein Lemonah, Sefer Torah, Ein Ketzadamav. There's no value, no specific value for Sefer Torah. It depends on too many variables, so therefore there's no way to assess it. Be'em Margos is a single animal and a single pearl. They also don't have a specific a set value because when you used to plow or pull a carriage, there used to always be a pair of animals. And of course, you want to make earrings, you used to have a pair of pearls. And certainly, if you need a pearl necklace, so then you need many, many pearls. So everything, their value in of themselves as individual entities is hard to assess, and therefore, for Rabbi Yehuda, there is no. So they said to him the obvious answer: everybody wants to have more pairs of everything, and nevertheless, we somehow find a way to gauge everything individually and independently. Saif, a sword, a sus, and a horse, retreats, and a shield, when you're selling them in war, obviously to the warriors, there's no concept of anoia because there is no absolute value to them because the warrior needs them far more badly than any absolute value can indicate. Okay?
All right.
Yishkoyach.
Terrific.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.